All right. So what we have here, and I have a wish me luck on purpose, what we have here is a brief video talking about Scanner and the nuances of Scanner. And the wish me luck is simply because this is the third go of the video. The first one, there was an issue. The second one, I didn't like something. I wanted to re-explain it, and it was worth doing it again to give a better explanation. So here we go. Let's go. We have here a program. I got a scanner object that I'm making. I'm saving its reference into the variable in. I have these other variables. I'm prompting the user to enter information about themselves, and then I am printing that information. So let's start with just running the program, which I hope works at the moment. Your first name, Tomas, is the first name. And last name, Beckles. Beckles sounds just fine. Age is 19. City that Tomas was born in. How about Tomas was born in Tampa? And the GPA 3.28. We hit enter, and this is the result. So notice for first name, we use the next method of scanner. For last name, we use the next method to scan the next single word. For age, we use next int. For place of birth, the city they were born, we use next. And then finally for GPA, I used next double. And then I used formatted printing to print out all of that information in a reasonable fashion without having to deal with concatenated printing, which is a disaster. So let's run this again, and let's see how we can produce an error that we can then talk about. So Tomas Beckles, the age was 19, the city, let's say Tomas was born in St. Pete, which is 2 words, which will clue you in onto the error that will occur as soon as I hit enter. Boom. Java cops and attitude, start shouting in red, input mismatch exception, where inside the scanner class, where else inside the scanner class. Drill all the way down so you can see where the error starts. It's actually right here. Scanner demo is the name of this class at line 22. So when I click that, line 22, it says that the error is right here. And we see that we're trying to read the next double, and it's giving us an error. Why? Well, up above, notice we typed in for the city St. Pete, which was 2 words. And so this error is happening because now when I'm trying to enter the GPA, and I haven't even entered 3.28, I haven't even entered Tomas's GPA, it's giving me an error and it's trying to scan something. So what's really going on under the hood? Let's first come over to the tablet and let's see what's going on. So in short, when you use the next method or the next int method or the next double method, what actually happens is, let's pretend that you ask someone to enter just their age. And here's like the edge of the screen. And in theory, they would enter their age right here. And then they hit the enter button, which I'm going to indicate with a new line, right? They hit the enter button. That's what, in theory, should occur when you ask someone to enter their age, right? Well, what if someone, instead of doing that, decided to be super intelligent and they put all kinds of spaces, they literally hit the space bar, maybe they put a tab, then they hit some space bar again, then finally they hit 19, and then they put more spaces, and then finally they decided to hit enter. What happens when we use the dot next int, right? We're going to do dot next int. Whether we did dot next int, dot next, or dot next double, what happens is Java will consume this entire line until it sees the new line. And it will ignore the new line, and it will take all of that entire line and it will put it into a buffer. What is this buffer? Think of it as just a spot in memory where it's going to put all of this, these spaces, the tab, the extra spaces, the 19, and the extra spaces. Java is going to put all of that into a buffer. And then, and only then, does Java run this method on it. And we'll talk about what that method does. So I'll come back to this tablet in a moment, but I wanted to start, this is what I wanted to redo this time. I wanted to start by showing that before it even has a chance to run this next int, before that really happens, which I'm about to explain what happens when you do next int, the first thing is this entire string all the way until the user hits enter right here. This whole thing is consumed in one go, and it's saved into what I'm calling here as a buffer. Let me just erase this so when I come back it'll be clear. All right, so now let's come back over to the code and let's look at a bit more detail of next, next int, and next double. Each of these methods works exactly as follows. They start by skipping any and all leading or trailing leading white space characters. We're talking about spaces, tabs, new lines. All of those spaces are going to be ignored. All of those white space characters will be ignored. Until when? Until the scanner sees the first non-white space character. So once the scanner sees a character that is not a space or a tab or a new line, at that moment, they start consuming and saving that data, those non-white space characters. Until which point? When does it stop consuming the data? Once it sees a trailing white space character. So an example is going to clarify this. If we had the next method, in theory, you should understand that the next method is used to scan in a single word. That's it. So how does this actually work? Let's say we ask the user to enter a 2-letter abbreviation for the state they live in, and the user was a genius. Here's the cursor all the way over here. Imagine it was right here. And they should have just hit FL and then enter, which I'm indicating with that new line. But instead, they were a genius. They put some tabs, they put some spaces, they kept doing all of this. They then hit FL, they then put some more spaces, because again, they're a genius. And then finally, they put a new line. Imagine they did something like that. Well, what actually happens under the hood when you do next? Well, as I said, all of this, because remember, when you hit next or next int, next double, the program is effectively paused and it's waiting for the user to do what? To hit the enter key. And it's going to consume everything that you typed in, spaces, non-spaces, tab. It'll consume all of that until you hit the enter key. And it saves all of this into a buffer. And so now that all of that is in a buffer, what actually happens? It's going to skip all of the leading white space, meaning the white space that comes before the F and L is just going to be completely ignored. It's going to be skipped by the next int method. It's going to completely skip it. Then it sees the first non-white space character, this F. It sees it, it consumes it, and it saves it. It sees the L, and it saves it. And then the scanner is going to literally stop right here after the L. It's not even going to stop on the space. It's going to stop before the space, but after the L. So here's the L in the space. It's going to stop between them right there. That's where the scanner is going to stop because it sees that after the L is a space. It's a white space character. So it stops right there. That's what actually happens under the hood for next. Same thing for next int. That imagine we ask the user to enter their age. Here's a sample entry. Once again, we have a genius who decided to put a lot of spaces, and then finally they put 19, and then they finally hit enter, which that new line there, the \n, is indicating they clicked enter. So what happens with this next int method? It will skip all of the leading white space characters. I say there are none because I had initially had it like this. But it will skip any and all leading white space. So if there's all kinds of leading white space, it's going to skip it. Then the scanner is going to see this first non-white space character, which is the number 1, and it's going to consume it. Then it sees this 9, and it consumes the 9, and it saves that 9. And together we now have a string, a 1 and a 9. And then finally the scanner sees this new line, and it actually will stop scanning because a new line is a new line is a white space character. So it's going to stop right here before the new line. It will not even consume that new line. And then finally, since this is a next int method, what we have at this point, after it consumes the 1 and the 9, we have a string with the 1 and the 9 inside it. And what happens under the hood is this next int method actually, where's my mouse? The next int method will actually convert that string 1, 9 into an integer, or it will try. How? Under the hood, it will do this. It'll say integer dot parse int, and it puts the string that it consumed inside it, and then it sends back that answer, that integer 19 as the result. So that's how next int works. That's also how next double will work. The same way, it'll stop scanning once it sees a space or a tab or a new line, and then it will try to convert using double dot parse double. So what is going on in this code? What's happening when we typed in St. Pete? Well, what's happening is this. We asked, what is your age? And that's on one line of input. So enter your age, and we did a next int. And so right here, the scanner consumes the 1, it consumes the 9, and then the cursor stops right there after the 9 because there's an enter after the 9. The user entered 1, 9, enter. So the cursor is going to stop right there. And next it says, which city were you born in? And we're using the .next method. And so what happens when we use the .next method, the cursor is right here after the 9. Well, the .next method does what? It starts by skipping any and all white space, well, including that new line that is right here after the 9. There's an enter. So it's going to skip that enter, and it's going to come over to here and start scanning. And it sees, aha, I have an S, so it consumes it. Aha, I have a T, it consumes it. Aha, I see a period, it consumes it. And then it sees it has a space, so it stops scanning. And the scanner stops literally right here after the period, before the space. And it saves the city that the student was born in. Which city were you born in? Apparently the place of birth on this example will simply be Saint. Not St. Pete, it'll just be ST period, because that's all that got scanned. Well, where's the error happen? The error happens when now we say enter your age, which did print. It printed right here, enter your age. And the error happens right here. We tell, hey scanner, yo Java, go to the scanner object and do the next double method. Java's like, I got you. And then what happens? Java comes right here. How does the next double method work? It starts by skipping all the white space, so it skips that space. And then it starts consuming once it sees the first non-white space character. So it consumes the P, it consumes the E, it consumes the T, it consumes this E, and then it says, oh, I see an enter. So it stops right here. And it takes this PETE and it tries to convert it to a double. That's not going to be kosher. It's not going to work, right? So how can we fix that? You're thinking, well, if I'm going to use .next for the place of birth, I can only enter one word. So I could have done it like this, Tomas Beckles, 19, place of birth, Saint, ST period, underscore, Pete. So now it's one contiguous string into your GPA 3.28. Well, that works, but that's trash. You're not going to ask someone where they're born and they have to enter underscores between letters. That's trash. So what's a solution? The solution is we simply come to place of birth and we say, you know what? Since a place of birth can be a multi-word city, let's not do a .next. Let's do a .next line. All of this is super simple till now. It might be overkill of an explanation, but you're now going to see why this was still very important. So next line will absolutely cover what we needed, right? This is going to cover what we needed mostly. Let's see what happens. Enter your first name. Here we go. Tomas. Enter the last name. Beckles. Enter the age. 19. Watch what happens now. When I hit enter, watch what happens. What? And we should be like, first we're confused, like, oh no, this doesn't make any sense. Maybe we want to give up. Why did it Ignore the fact that I wanted the user to enter what city they were born in. But now it's asking me the GPA. You're like, what the hell happened to the city? Why is it not asking me about the city? It doesn't make sense. Oh, Java must be trash. That's what's going on. And we get angry about it, or we give up. No, there's an explanation. What actually happened here? Why is it skipping this? Well, here's why it's important to understand these nuances of what these things mean. So we've covered next. We covered next int and next double. We did not cover next line. What does next line actually do? So here's what next line does. And read this carefully with me. From wherever the scanner is currently, the scanner will start consuming all characters to the right of it. Whether there's 1,000 characters to the right of it on the same line, 1,000,000 characters to the right of it on the same line, no characters perhaps to the right of it on the same line, it will keep consuming all characters from the point the scanner is at to the right that are on the same line. And when will the scanner stop consuming? When we do next line, when will it stop consuming? Once it sees the next line, because it's called next line, right? Once it sees the \n, this new line, that's when it stops consuming. So imagine that we had, for whatever reason, somehow the scanner had scanned a lot of stuff, and we had asked, oh my gosh, we had asked the scanner to scan some data, and then all of a sudden we said maybe scan something, whatever the 19 means, scan this, whatever that means, scan a first name, scan a last name, and the scanner's right here. Let's say the scanner's right there, and we did a next line. Well, what's going to happen? It's going to scan everything to the right, and it'll keep scanning until it sees a new line. So it's not going to stop when it sees a space or a tab. It'll keep on scanning everything until it sees a new line. Okay? And then it it stops at the new line because it doesn't save it as part of the string, but it will discard that new line and it will come to the very next line at the beginning. Sorry, let me come back to here. Right there. And the scanner will stop after scanning all of this. It will discard this new line right here. It'll discard that new line and it'll just wait right here. The scanner will come to the beginning of the next line and it will wait to continue scanning. Okay, so how does that help us, or what happened here on this input? The program's still running. Let me go ahead and put the GPA 3.28. And what happened? Place of birth is empty. What? That's crazy. We're probably still a bit confused. Why is place of birth empty? That makes no sense, perhaps. Let's make sense of it now. Let's start right at the beginning. Here's the scanner. We did a dot next, right? What does that dot next do? Just follow me here. You know what? I think it's probably even better. Let me I want to make it clearer here. And yeah, right here. All right, so they're going to enter Tomas Beckles 19, and they wanted to enter a city. We were unable to, so I just put a GPA. So what happened? Why did it work that way? Or worse, what if I run this and I didn't even see that happened? I type in Tomas Beckles 19. I know that I'm supposed to enter a city right now, and I'm not even really paying attention maybe to the output. I'm not paying attention that it somehow skipped city and it's asking GPA. So I just type in immediately St. Pete. What's going to happen? Well, it's going to crash because it's trying to do the GPA and it's trying to convert all of St. Pete to a double, which is not going to work. So one more time, Tomas Beckles. Who is Tomas? Got to meet this guy. Enter your age, 19. And let's put a GPA here, but we're still very confused on why it's skipping place of birth. Well, what's going on? Now let's figure this out. So here we are, line 59, okay? And we have this code right here. Enter your first name, and we do a dot next. So this is, imagine the input area. and the scanner, I'm going to put a new line after each one of these. Whenever the user put an enter, I'm going to put a new line just to show they clicked enter. This is the input that ultimately got entered by the user into the program. And why did we end up skipping that question of which city you were born in? Let's figure that out now. So this is the input. So when we do the dot next right here, what actually happens? I want to make this a little smaller. Perfect. What actually happens when we do that dot next right here for enter your name? Right here. What happens is the scanner started right here at the beginning of the program, and it's going to skip any leading white space before Tomas. Well, there was no white space. And it's going to start consuming once it sees the first non-white space character. So it consumes the T, the O, the M, the A, the S, and it stops right here because it sees there's a new line. So it stops before the new line. And the word Tomas that was scanned as a string got saved into the variable first name. That worked. Cool. Let's go. What about Beckles? What happens? Well, let's discuss this. Beckles, enter your last name. They enter Beckles. We have another dot next method. Remember, where's the scanner? The scanner is right here after the S and Tomas. How does the next method work? It starts by skipping all leading white space. Well, that is this new line. It skips that new line. And it comes to the next line, and it starts consuming the B, the E, the C, the K, the E, the L, the S, and it stops right here. But what's most important about that example I just gave is the scanner was on this line above, and it had to first skip the new line to come down to this next line. That's how it works. It skips any leading white space. This is a white space, and enter is considered white space. It skipped it. It came to the next line, and then it consumed B, E, C, K, E, L, S, and it stopped right here. And it takes Beckles, and it saved it into last name. Cool. Enter your age. What happens? Well, the scanner's right here after the S in Beckles. So what happens is now it's going to skip any leading white space. We skip the new line, and we come to the next line. We skip the white space. We come to the 1. It sees it's a non-white space character. It consumes the 1. It consumes the 9. It then stops right here after the 9, before the new line, and it sees that this is a white space, so it stops right here after the 9 of 19, and it takes that entire 19, it parses it as an integer since we used next int, and we save it into age. That worked fine. Let's go. Where's the error? The error is about to happen. Well, we are right here. We're on this line. We just scanned the 19. The scanner is right here after the 9. And now we're saying, yo, Java, give me the next line. Well, how does that work? What does next line do? Remember, next line, from wherever the scanner is, the scanner will start consuming all characters, spaces, tabs, other characters, all characters to the right on that same line. It'll start consuming everything on that same line from where it's currently at until it sees a new line. And then it will discard that new line. So check this out. The scanner is right here. When we do right now dot next line, the scanner is going to scan everything from where it's at. Again, it's right here. It's between the 9 and the end of the line. It's right here. You can see it blinking. That's where the scanner is at. So the scanner is going to scan everything to the right. Well, there's nothing to the right except for a new line. But if there was all kinds of stuff here, the scanner would have scanned all of this stuff, and it would have just discarded the new line, and it would have come to the next line. Well, whether there is no stuff there, or if there is a lot of stuff there, it's going to scan everything. So right now, when we do next line, what it actually does is there's nothing to scan, right? I said it scans everything to the right, and it saves all of that into one single string, which is basically an empty string on this example. Like if we had 3 spaces, it would scan that string of 3 spaces, and it would save it into a string of 3 spaces. And then it would just it would discard the new line, and it would come to the next line. Well, there is no string there. So when it tries to scan, it just finds nothing left, no problem. So it's going to make an empty string, And that is what will get saved into place of birth, in theory, is what would get saved. And then we have this next line right here. And what happens? Because we're doing we have a new line right here. So again, one more time. We have the next line method that we're trying to execute, and the scanner is right here. Very succinctly, what happens? It tries to scan all the way until it sees a new line, and it wants to save that data into a string. Well, there's nothing to scan, so it's going to save nothing into an empty string. It's going to see this new line, it's going to discard it, and then it's going to come right here to the next line. And so what happened is nothing actually really got entered into, we never actually even gave the user a chance to enter anything for place of birth. The user wanted to type and enter, we never gave them a chance. Because the scanner, when we said do next line, the scanner was already right. See, normally, if we had done it right, and we said next line, the scanner would be right here waiting for the user to enter something. The scanner is just waiting. And the user would have to type, I am from St. Pete, and then they'd hit enter. But the reason why that didn't happen is the scanner was not waiting. The scanner had data to collect on that line. So when you said, hey, do the next line method, like we did the next int, which brought us to scan that, now the scanner's right here, and you say do the next line method, the scanner's like, okay, I see there's a new line here, so let me keep scanning, discard the new line. I scanned nothing, but I did it for you. Hopefully that makes sense. So that's what's going on when we run this code right now. Tomas Beckles. It's funny, I'm even trying to spell it correctly, and even though it's a made-up name, 19. When I hit enter, it's going to scan the 19. It's going to then stop right here because that's a white space character. And then I really want to be able to say which city you're born in, which is going to happen. It is going to happen. Watch when I hit enter. It prints which city you were born in, but the reason it doesn't let me put an entry, and now it's waiting for GPA, is because it already had something to consume. It already had values to consume afterwards. And you know what? Let me make it even clearer. How about this? I'm thinking out loud here. Of course I'm thinking out loud. How about this? Tomas Beckles, check this out. What if I said, yeah, my age is 19, and I just put some garbage afterwards? Is that going to give you an error? No, check this out. It says enter your GPA 3.28, and it assumes the place of birth is not just ASDF, but a space ASDF. Because again, what happens now? This is a good example. So here, if the user had typed this for the age, well, the scanner scanned the 19, and it stopped right here. It stopped right where you see it blinking after the 19. And then when we, on the next line, say what city you were born in, it doesn't let the user enter more data because the scanner's like, wait, you're asking me to do the next line method? Okay, but I already have stuff on this line. I'm going to go ahead and consume the rest of that. So it consumes all of this. It saves that as a string. It saves it into place of birth, which is why it now says place of birth is space ASDF. Then it sees the new line, it discards it, and it comes to the next line. That's a lot. What's the takeaway? The takeaway is because next and next int and next double, because they all scan and they leave the scanner on the same line, like after scanning a next, the scanner is going to stop on that same line before the new line. Same thing for here. This next, it's going to scan this and it's going to stop after the S and stay on that same line. And same thing for, again, the next int. The scanner is going to stop right here. Same thing for the next double. The scanner stops right there. So because of all of that, it's not good practice to intermix next int, next double with next line. When you're using next line back and forth with next double, it can be very confusing unless you know this very well. So what's the solution? What's the easy solution here? Before I tell you how a real programmer would do it, the easy solution is we realize that after entering their age, the scanner will still be on the same line of the age input, right? After entering the age and clicking enter, even though they clicked enter, the scanner is going to stop right there, which means if we do a next int right here and we think we're going to be saving it into place of birth, it's not, because we're going to be saving just a new line into place of birth effectively, an empty string into place of birth actually. So what is a workaround? The workaround is this. Check this out. This is the workaround. In dot next int. We just do that. And by just doing that, maybe, is that a big brain thing? I don't know. But by just doing that, what is that doing? This consumes and discards the new line character. That's what happens. So when we do this right here, imagine we said enter your age, and we want to scan the age. We scan the 19. The scanner stops right there. Hold on, let me type this. We enter the 19, and the scanner stops right here. And now we want to scan St. Pete, right? We want to use a next line method to scan St. Pete in one go. But as we know, if we did the next line method right now, it's going to consume nothing, an empty string, and save it into St. Pete, which doesn't make any sense. So we need to somehow get the scanner to advance to the next line. The scanner's right here after the 9 and 19, and we want the scanner to advance to right here. So how can we take the scanner that is right here, and how can we have it advance to right here? Well, we need to tell it, yo Java, just do a next line, which is going to advance to which will advance to the next line. Do a next line method. Did I say next int? Sorry, that was a typo. Gee whiz. Next line. Back up everything I said and hopefully make sense of it with typing this correctly here. One more time now. We typed in 19 as next int. The scanner's right here. We want to be able to do the next line to save it to place of birth and scan all of this, but as we've learned, with the scanner being right here after the 9 of 19, when I do this next line for place of birth, what happens is it will consume this new line. Well, it'll consume the empty string before the new line, which is nothing. So in short, how do we advance the scanner from where it's blinking after the 9 of 19? How do we advance it and have it come to the next line? By simply doing a next line. And we're not going to save this into any variable. I'm not going to say string, garbage, useless, variable, equals n.next line. I don't need to even save it anywhere. I mean, I could do that. There's no harm. But there's no need to even, we're going to take the scanner. We're telling it, scan the next line. Just consume, advance to the next line is really what's happening. That's the better way of saying it. Just, let me do that. Advance to the next line. That's really what's going to happen. Advance to the next line is what we're doing when we're here and we do an n.next line. We just basically skip that. And so now this is going to work. Now I can do this as expected. Tomas Beckles, age 19, your city you were born in is St. Pete, and your GPA 3.28. This is a very common mistake with new programmers where they try to intermix next line with next int, or next double. And you have all of this chaos because you're like, I don't know, I was trying to scan a next line and it gave me this error and I'm so confused. Well, because you didn't watch this video, right? So this hopefully clarifies that confusion and clears things up. But let me end by telling you, how would a professional programmer do this? Professional programmers, developers, they don't normally even want to do a dot next or a next int or a next double. They don't even want to do that. A professional programmer, they will normally scan everything with next line. Just everything they're going to do with next line. Because now you're not intermixing next with next lines, right? Everything is just next line. So we don't need this. Everything's going to be next line, even the GPA. Now, the problem, of course, next line will scan the entire line, right? So the problem is going to be, well, next line works for first name, and it's actually more appropriate for first name, because what if their name is Mary Kate, Marie Claire? I'm trying to think of various two-word names. You could have a two-word first name, maybe a two-word last name. So it's even more appropriate. But what about now for age? How can I scan age if I ask the user enter your age and I scan it via the entire line instead of next int? Well, what can I do? No problem, because again, developers, we want control. So a professional developer would usually do this. Integer.parse int, and inside the parentheses, they're going to do in.next line. Here, for GPA, double dot next double. Inside the parentheses, they're going to put in.next line. So a professional developer will normally not want to be going back, and if they're coding in Java, back and forth between next lines and next double, next ints, because they're going to have this issue, and the only way around that issue is to do these seemingly random advance the scanner object and having to do this in.next line just to advance it. And you don't have to put that within all the rest of your code. So a professional developer will normally do as we just showed here. Why did I call this next double? I did not even notice that. That is supposed to be parse double. All right, so just like integer.parseInt, double.parse double. We have a 36-minute video on Scanner. You could not have imagined that we'd have 36 minutes on Scanner, but hopefully this is clear. As always, comment, reach out, ask questions. It has been fun. Let's go. Take care, everyone.